Guys, welcome to our office hours. We'll just give people a few more minutes to join in. Can you confirm that you can hear me and see me okay? And see the screen okay? Just use the chat function and that'll be awesome. All right, thank you, Willie. Appreciate that. As usual, feel free to post any questions in the Q&A function here in Zoom, and I'll be happy to cover that question during our office hours. Just going to wait a little bit and then go ahead and start the stream. Usually good stuff. Flip this one over here. I see some more people joining in. Welcome. As usual, if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A function, and I'll be happy to answer them as soon as we get started here. Right, gonna get the chat window up and running, and then we should be ready to go. Right, gonna get the streaming going. And we are live. Gonna double check on my phone real quick, see that we have something going on. Kind of hard to do that differently. But we are indeed live, perfect. Now I don't need that anymore. Once again, welcome back to our office hours. My name is Johan, I'll be your host for the next hour. This is where you can ask questions on virtually everything related to systems management, ConfigMgr, Intune, a bit of deployment, MDT, and of course, Windows 10, Windows 11, group policy, or whatever you can think of. I've been doing this for a while, and while I not have seen everything, I've seen a lot. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. So let's bring them in. I try to monitor our Twitter feed, our Facebook feed, our YouTube feed, our LinkedIn feed on the window here next to me. So hopefully that will work as well. Okay, where can we start? Do you guys have any questions for me? Nothing so far. I can see a few people joining in here, some that I actually recognize. Good to see you guys again. Well, while we're waiting for questions to come in, I can definitely highlight some of the recent changes. And for those of you that didn't see it, there was a new Intune release that was just flighted earlier this week in my tenant. It might have been available to a few of you earlier, but it had some shiny changes to it. So I'm just going to go up and bring up the video here in full screen. Not that one, but this one. Beautiful. So what's new in Intune? That's, I can't even spell Intune. That's great. Here we go. The 21.11 release, just fresh out of the door. In addition to remote help, which a lot of people has been waiting for. The only downside I would say right now is that it seems to be an additional license cost connected to this one, but I've seen some of the MVPs already start to play around with it and see how it's working. And it seems to be working quite okay, even though it's in an early stages still in the platform. And then, of course, this was the release I was referring to before, but you do have the option now of actually duplicating configuration profiles without having to use a PowerShell script or a third-party tool like from Mika's famous tool for exporting, import information into Intune. So quite happy to see that showing up in the product. Been a long waiting feature to that one. I know a lot of people are also excited about the recent custom compliance options that you can add in instead of just relying on the one that happens to be there from before. So for those of you in the chat, I'll be happy to post that link right here. This is one of those links that you typically bookmark and keep returning to every now and then. Good information for sure. All right. Questions, anyone? Willie had a question regarding MDT deployment shares. Let's see. Okay. Basically, the question is relating to a fairly well-known bug in MDT. I blogged about it a while ago when it came. It was basically introduced with Windows ADK 2004 and Windows 10 2004, but it's still present in all versions later than that. And basically what it comes back to is that Microsoft is changing, or was changing, their detection method on how Windows is trying to figure out whether you boot it on a BIOS-based machine or whether you are on a UEFI-based machine. So prior to the release in this hotfix, I had to write a little script that I ran that would fix the detection and set the variables correctly for the script or for the platform to work. So if you're into a scenario where the hotfix that Microsoft provides doesn't work for you, I haven't seen any of those scenarios yet, but this is something you can try to implement as well. Other than that, the hotfix is a little bit tricky because if you go to the knowledge base article, it tells you basically to download the hotfix, extract it, and copy it to the installation directory. But what some folks are missing is that you also need to do that for each and every existing deployment share that you have. And once you have done that, of course, making sure that you got it in both 32 and 64-bit folders, depending on what you're using, what type of boot image you are using. But I have the hotfix here somewhere. Yeah. So once you extract this file, you get these two binaries, and you simply about copying them into the right folder and make sure that the version is correct there. A particular fun fact about this hotfix is that if I open a bit of PowerShell, and check the version of it. You kind of see who updated this file last time. And sure enough, Microsoft brought in Niehaus by last year to go ahead and fix this particular DLL in Windows, even though Niehaus at the time was on the autopilot team. He went back and fixed it. But in my experience, as long as that file is present in the deployment shares, it's been working fine. It's been detecting bias in UEFI fine for me. But as I mentioned, if that doesn't happen, I mean, you should see it in the, if you go to one of my servers here, like this one, I believe I added it to this one of my deployment shares. You will see also from a date point of view that this one is updated. So let's see, there was a follow-up comment there. Also tried fix the, after I tried the scripts right also. If the hotfix doesn't do it and the script doesn't do it, then I'm not really sure what issue there is. So Will, is this on a particular hardware only, or is it just across the board on all your hardwares? Just on the MDT server itself. Okay, so if you get an error message when trying to replace it, it can be one of two things. Well, really one thing only. The thing is, if I go into MDT and I create a new deployment share, so colon demo for permissions, that's going to be my deployment share. So yes, default setting for the rest. MDT by default locks down the permissions so bad on it. So it's only administrators that will actually have access to it. So, and that is not just on the sharing level, but it also is on the file system level, which is basically making it unusable. So what I recommend is borrowing a script. I think I actually blogged about it at some point. This one. I'll put that in the chat for you. So basically taking this script, borrow it up to your server, and you would have to change to the name of the folder and whatever share you had for it. I called mine demo I think. Demo dollar. So in this case, it's going to grant, I don't need that one to modify. It's going to be read just fine. This is my build account that I'm using. But if you run this script, it's going to go ahead and relax those permissions to something that is more reasonable for a deployment share. The only thing you might want to skip, depending on how your manifest look, is to skip to having users to be able to read it, because sometimes you actually store credential information in there. So if that's the case, you simply skip this one or comment out this one before you run it, and then make sure that only your build account can actually read it. So that should do it. The only thing I can think of, if you're having trouble replacing the file, is some antivirus software or something blocking it. But usually fixing the permissions should hopefully do the trick. Otherwise, really, please drop me an email and I'll see if I can follow up offline on that one, because that's what I kind of have on the top of my head right now. All right, let's see what else. Al had a question. Any idea if the no remote help app would work on a computer that has failed during autopilot? I'm sorry about that one. I have absolutely no idea. I haven't tested that yet. What I have seen is that people are actually been able to get the normal remote assistance working in the autopilot scenario, basically shift F10 and get it going that way. So that I quite hesitant that it will work, because it does require the Intune integration, and in the autopilot, if it fails, you're not really enrolled. I guess it depends on when it fails. If it fails during app installs, for example, yeah, maybe then, but I'm sorry, I don't know about that one. If anyone in the chat happen to know if the new remote help will work the autopilot, feel free to make a comment, but it's not something I've heard about. Also, again, the feature is indeed in preview, so we can expect changes also until it becomes generally available. All right. See what other things coming in. So there was a question regarding TPM updates and doing that without user interruption. That is unfortunately a bit of a challenge, because if you're going from TPM 1.2 to 2.0 to get support for additional features, or for example, to get support for Windows 11, nearly all of the vendor tools and biases, they actually require physical presence no matter what switches you throw at those tools. And that means that someone needs to be there to press like F1 or punch in a little code after you've done that upgrade, and possibly also clearing the TPM shift depending on setup here. But customers that I've been working with that have done this upgrade here, which only have to do once, by the way, typically, unfortunately, often someone have to be there and press a key, which makes it a little bit hard to fully automate. You can certainly automate the upgrade itself, but that press a key thing is it's difficult. All right, good stuff. Any other questions? Got a little greeting from Sweden here, from Andreas. Said good evening. Just noticed that you were streaming. Unfortunately, I have to go to some sleep. Yeah, that's close to midnight back home in Sweden now, so I think you are perfectly all right to be excused. But thanks for stepping in. All right, any other questions? You have a whopping 39 minutes available. Make them count. And yeah, we will try to schedule a few of these office hours in more reasonable times for people over in Europe. Staying up until midnight just to chat about deployment is admirable, but it's so is sleep. So there are a follow-up question regarding TPM. We currently disable TPM for our Windows 10 machines. Will TPM have to be enabled for Windows 11 images? So far, Windows 11 actually does require TPM and UEFI to be up and running for the machine to show up as compatible. I have seen some creative registry entries being added to basically skip certain checks, but that's something I don't really recommend anyone doing because you never know how that will backfire half a year or 2 years from now. What you can do, however, is that, of course, through update compliance, through endpoint analytics, you can at least get a quick overview on how bad it is in your environment in terms of readiness for Windows 11. So if you go to your reports in Intune and you scroll down to endpoint analytics, work from anywhere, Windows, and this will give you an idea about how bad or good shape it is. A lot of these machines are virtual machines, and even though I enable TPM on a few of them, it still doesn't like my CPU, and that is basically because even though I have, in my opinion, a pretty shiny CPU, a lot of cores, a lot of views, can run hundreds of VMs on this one, it's still too old to be considered to be compatible with Windows 11. Of course, we also have our friends over at Endpoint Manager. Jan, Maurice, and Sandy has been working tirelessly to provide what I say is probably, well, not probably, is by far the best workbook available right now for update compliance in Intune. And they published it for free. They did that on November 26th. But this one also will show you some readiness information for feature updates. They have some delivery optimization changes, and it's just a beautiful, very well done workbook that you can download that you can implement in your tenant. That's used like log analytics. You of course have to enable that one, and you need to configure your client so they will actually report this information up to Intune. They don't do it by default, but that's a fairly easy configuration. The Microsoft documentation still recommends that you use custom CSP, but I am much more comfortable using a settings catalog to provide these changes because it's kind of hard to make this wrong where you click enable, whereas when you paste in a 40-character long CSP string, it's, well, there are room for errors, to put it that way. But yeah, this is just a very, very nice community. My hats off for all the hours they put in to make that happen. Very cool. Put the link on that one in the chat as well. All right. Any other questions? Probably mentioned that they released a nice one for BIOS compliance also just the other day. Yeah, this one here. Making sure you're on the right BIOS version. I will put that link in the chat to get some reading for you later for the evening. All right. Any other questions? So let's see. We are currently looking at enabling Intune in an existing Azure AD environment that's been rolled out earlier. I see some worrying documentation about changing the management authority from basic level to either Intune or co-management. Am I right to be worried that we don't brick our M365 environment? I have not done that configuration myself, but I certainly haven't heard of anything related to enabling co-management bricking an existing tenant. Yeah, no worries about the spelling. I'm not very good myself on that one for sure. I haven't heard a thing about it, but I haven't tried to do that specific configuration myself either. So that one is out of the air, I'm afraid. Unless someone in the chat have done it and happen to know the answer for it. But I'm gonna take a copy of that one and reach out to a few folks that I know and see if I can get an answer for the upcoming office hours next week. Also, follow-up comment there, we're doing a hybrid join environment and I feel your pain. That one I actually have done and it's absolutely no fun, I'm afraid. If you can stay away from it, that was a follow-up comment. It's in general for the better. I showed this post, not last week because we had a break for Thanksgiving, but this is one of the best posts I've seen related to debunking some of the myths around why you need hybrid. But this one, even though it was written back in March, has been updated since, especially from a discussion that happened during the summertime during July. But this is just one of those amazingly good blog posts highlighting a lot of the considerations and things you may run into when trying to figure out whether or not to join in Azure AD only, or if you still need to have machines join into legacy AD and still being registered in Intune. And don't get me started by doing this combination with autopilot, because that adds a whole other level of complexity to it. I'm an organization that has been spending literally months getting that up to a solid state, and that's just, there are so many moving pieces, so it's challenging to get it right. All right. All right, I'm saving that question for next time. Any other questions? I have multiple windows. It's a little bit above my comfort zone, but I'm doing my best. There was another question here regarding MDT Light Touch. Will there be an update? I actually reached out a few weeks back to the MDT product group which is the ConfigMgr team, meaning in this case, one person working on MDT. And the answer was, we will only update if we need to. And apparently, currently, the word is that you don't need to. In my testing, and testing that Mike Niehaus did for Windows 11, for, let's see if I can find that one. Let's see lately. He did an early this summer, and he found that it worked just fine. And I've deployed quite a number of Windows 11 machines with MDT, and it's been working just fine as well. The only thing I haven't tested is the, for example, here, where you have, if you're adding in roles and features, those actions in MDT obviously doesn't have a Windows 11 or Windows Server 22 option. So if there are features that have changed the name or are added or removed, you won't be able to get them here. You have to add in custom PowerShell scripts instead of using this option. But other than that, deployment seems to be working just fine. Driver works fine, application works fine, setting works fine. Sysprep and capture works fine as long as you stay away from internet access. And yeah, but the short answer to the question is, what I've heard so far is no, there won't be a new MDT version right now. Let's see. One of your questions was about an error doing a test VM through a test deployment share. I couldn't see the error message that was posted. I don't believe there was an error message posted. It was just the mentioning of an error message. If you are referring to the BIOS error that I talked about earlier, that would be this particular error, where it basically whines about the boot record not being okay. That's what happened if you cannot detect, or basically if it detects a BIOS-based machine as a UEFI machine without it actually being a UEFI machine. Right, let's see what else is coming up. Okay, a question related to drivers. Well, in MDT, there are quite many ways of dealing with drivers. The one I have preferred to be using for probably almost 2 decades now, but at least a decade and a half, is having a bit more controlled, where you are either having OS family vendor model structure, or if you just have OS family and model structure like this one here. Because I kind of know that this is an HP. I know that a Latitude is a Dell. So I usually skip the vendor name in here. But for a sequence to be able to pick up those drivers, you would have to have some sort of logic added in. And that's usually done by setting a variable where you're pointing it to the particular folder in questions. So you basically use a variable here, either the built-in model, if that one works for you, or a custom one like model alias exit, if this doesn't work for you. And some models can simply be more difficult to detect than others. And some vendors have their own interesting ways of defining models. It would have been nice if all vendors have been following the same strategy, but unfortunately they are not. But then to get this to work, as long as that resolve into that name and that folder is matching the folder here, you will have a match. And then you, as the comment was here, you have to go in and say nothing here. for this to work. And then you say out of nothing, you want everything. And it's basically, you're saying that I want what's in this folder only for this particular model. If you have challenging models, you can get some good inspiration from Maurice. He obviously have similar detection in his driver automation solution. That happens to work with MDT as well, at least from an import point of view. But if you open one of those scripts, see where I put the latest one. Not there, maybe I did. It did release version 7 just the other week, so that one should be available too. Driver management, GitHub. Yeah, version 7 was released, and that supports now. If you look at the release notes, have support for Windows 11 and Server and Windows 10.21.2 here. So nice update there. But what I wanted to show you was the invoke script. Let's see if I can find that real quick. Copy around. This one will do just fine. It's a little bit older, works the same. If you look in this script, you see that there is like a large statement of different vendors where Maurice is basically figuring out different ways to detect which one that is which. And most of the time, you want to work with system skew, which is that 4-character long name that usually identifies a module. Quite elegant. So instead of getting a model, asking the computer system class, you can actually ask this class that is available in WinP as well. This is where the detection happened. But this is where you can see that, for example, for Dell computers, he offers a fallback skew that has a slightly different one. But you can use this for different vendors. I have no idea what a Vigilant computer is, but apparently they exist. Panasonic are using baseboard typically, but that one is also now using system information. This one is using baseboard. But yeah. So bottom line, if MDT doesn't detect something that you wanted to, you can fix that yourself. Traditionally, we have done that through user exit scripts, where we use either PowerShell or VBScript to have a similar approach where we, for different type of vendors and models, are using different type of queries. Same concept apply. All right. I hope that answered the question. It was a long answer to a short question. Brett had a follow-up question here regarding TPM upgrades. Apparently, I got an email with a custom solution. I'll be definitely replying back to that one and see what you guys have come up with there. Not great, but it worked. Well, works goes for me. Work always beats beauty. Always. And thank you for that. All right. Any other questions? We have 19 more minutes. open up the other Q&A window also. Nothing yet. All right, we have a question coming in from YouTube. It's Mike. Let's see, when building a machine, how can you populate the name of the device early in the build or when checking the build monitor in ConfigMgr? Well, MDT and ConfigMgr works a little bit different there. Because in MDT, as soon as the initial script runs, you can start to set variables. But in ConfigMgr, naming has to actually be set as soon as the sequence environment is available. And you can use either pre-start functions there, because even in a pre-start function, like this one here, even though you haven't yet selected a sequence, let's see, tsconfig, you can still call for things that finds and sets variables. In this particular example, I'm using this is a script that sets some retry variables, but these are, as you can see here, actual sequence environment variables. You can do it in PowerShell if you don't like VB-script, but then you have to launch that instead through the tsconfig file. So maybe something like that if you want to set the name super early in the process. Those of you who haven't seen it, also the remote monitoring tool that we're talking about here is either using Dart to add into ConfigMgr boot image, so you have a chance of remoting into machines really early in the process. And the question was really, okay, how can we have a real name already this early? And that we simply have to set it real early for this to happen. If you want, you can delay Dart a little bit so that it starts through the tsconfig file rather than the MDT file, and then it should pick up the name. It should also change the name right away as soon as you change it and reports up to the server again. Let's see, putting that in the chat for you. Gary also has one that is good. It's a bit of an overachiever, so he did a post of both Dart and VNC at the same time. But basically, if you don't have Dart licenses, if you don't have software assurance, VNC is not bad at all. So a similar PowerShell script that will add in the support for this into the boot image. I hope that answered the question, but basically setting the variables early on is doable even in ConfigMgr. And the script that runs the monitoring tool should pick up that value and show it in the console, or MDT monitoring console, I should say. So there's a question regarding HP Image Assistant. Basically, they ask if anyone else is using that for driver updates in standalone environments. I don't know of any customers that is using it. Brett just answered yes here in the chat, so I take there is at least one person in here that is using it. I should be able to Grant permission to chat with, yeah, you should have the ability to chat to each other here in the Zoom call. So maybe if you guys can figure something out. I added the permission so everybody could chat to everyone. So you should be able to do that. If not, let me know. Awesome. Any other questions? And I post a text file here. I know that Zoom has an option in the chat that it looks like a little folder one, but I might only be available for actually moderators. So I'm not sure if you can. You can definitely post a link. If you upload it to OneDrive and just post a link, that will work as well. I don't see any permission option to change that. And I mean, for the folks on the call that haven't seen these solutions, it just having access to WinP remotely is so helpful, especially these days when we're trying to figure out BIOS configurations and virus stuff, and we're trying to work at home while doing that. I did a project for a customer in Canada where all machines were remote, all of them. And we just had a few machines at the office where basically no one were. That was quite good to be able to leave them in a state where we had WinP running, but we still can remote into them. So that works with MDT, it works with ConfigMgr. But basically, if I take a client like this one here and boot it on a boot image, like this one here, I'll be able to remote into this one as soon as it actually started up. And this, by the way, is the Millennium Falcon doing the Lightspeed jump, of course. Has a history, this little background. I did a conference back in System Center Universe years ago, and one requirement for every speaker was to include something from Star Wars into the presentation. And this was my way of adding that to the presentation. Anyhow, I started up the client, and you can see that Dart is now waiting on the client side for a remote connection. So I can pick a sequence, I can continue, but I can also go ahead and go over to my deployment server or anywhere you install the workbench, doesn't have to be on the server. Go to the monitoring node, and I will now see that machine running, and I can double click it and I remote into it from my console. And I can continue to type in a computer name or whatever I prefer on this particular machine and continue the deployment from here. And while you are remoted in, it actually locks the keyboard on the actual machine. So if a user tries to do something clever here, that they can type anything until I release the window here for my console. And even though Dart hasn't been updated in years and years and years, it still works. Even in latest and greatest Windows ADK 11 or WinP from ADK 11. Good stuff. And I'm gonna turn off that VM. All right. Any other questions? YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. As a follow-up comment about some G8 HP devices not liking touchpad in WinPE. That's a lot of alt space, yeah, to choose a sequence. That can be challenging. Should be able to get drivers in though. I have seen some posts related to that, but it's nothing I have tried myself. I might have been David Segura actually doing something related to that. Thought I saw something. Well, if you're not already following David, you totally should. He is behind osdeploy.com with all the OSD builder tools and the OSD cloud and the autopilot stuff. And he knows a lot of deployment. Put it that way. But just doing a quick search on his name and touchpad driver. I could swear he had something posted on that. No. Oh, sorry, didn't find anything on that one. Thank you. All right, any other questions? Brett just posted a link in the chat and asked for verification. Yep, I can see that one just fine. Thank you for that. That was a long one. Dang, 649 lines script. Yep, impressed. All right. Any other questions or comments? Well, let's see. There was a question from earlier that I apparently missed. You know, where in Azure Intune I can find a location where an admin is adding our DHCP name servers. Not from the top of my head. Is for delivery optimization by any chance? That's the DHCP in the question. The only thing I can think of is possibly if there is a setting in the settings catalog for it or something. I should recently added in a ton of new settings, 1,400 of them into the settings catalog. But none of them are for DHCP. Oh no, I do not know where that setting came from. I mean, it could be a custom script that someone put together that sets that information. normally it comes from DHCPs, but not the actual names of the servers, just who they are. Oh, sorry, don't know about that one. The follow-up comment was basically there's a registry key that is incorrect on all the clients. No, but I mean, a remediation script or just a custom script can be used to correct it to whatever it's supposed to be. That's fairly easy to put together in Intune. Basically do a detection and see if it's supposed to be a certain value. If it's not, fix it. So pretty much like a ConfigMgr baseline, but the Intune flavor of it. That's all I can think of. Unless someone in the chat has happened to know why or where this particular registry key is being set incorrectly on the systems. So if you happen to know, feel free to reach out. All right, anything else? 2 more minutes. All right, as usual then. Thank you so much for joining. We will have upcoming office hours somewhere here coming up next week, same time. We have also some upcoming courses for Q1, including a new version of the free Building Perfect Lab course. So if you haven't signed up for that one, there is one for Q1 also somewhere hiding, I think. I did approve it. Yeah, this one here. So you need a lab environment. That's the one to check out. And I believe we set the date to, yeah, January 20. And this one is on European time, or at least a chance for people in Europe to join as well. So good stuff there. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining, and I hope to see you again next week. Thank you for all the good questions. Bye for now.